Hello, beautiful beings. Welcome back to the Brittany Renee experience. I am so excited about the host that I have on today. I'm going to let her do a little intro as well, but just to introduce her into our sphere and our circle, this is Miss Nichole Eaton. She is a best-selling author, a podcast host, and intuitive therapist. She has all kinds of magical gifts. So welcome onto the show. Thank you for being here, and I'd love you to just share a little bit more about you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. So I'm Nichole, for anybody I haven't connected with yet. I have a passion for helping people step back into their power. So I do that through neuroscience. I have a master's in mental health counseling and through the mystical. I love connecting people with the universe. I love connecting people with their own intuition so that they can make really aligned choices to live their best life.
Oh, I love that. Speaking to my soul. Those of you who know me and have
We're
been here.
on the same vibe here. We really are.
We vibe out in this space. So, as usual, you guys who are in the podcast, at least in the Brittany Renee experience, we keep this very conversational. If you guys have questions as you're watching this, please drop them down and we'll try to answer them. All of the details on how to find Nichole is going to be listed in the description so you guys can find her. We'll link also her books. She just hit the best-selling author. So congratulations.
Yay, thank you.
I'd love for you to tell me, let's just kind of get into flow here. What has really been coming up for you right now? I was just talking to my group about these next 90 days and how I feel like we always walk into this portal at the end of the year of like the snow globe getting turned upside down and shaken around. And it's like plot twist. And it's like kind of the shaving off of things that we can't carry with us into 24, right? So I'd love to hear your input on that and where you're at with everything.
That's exactly the vibe. I actually just put out a podcast called Don't Give Up Before the Breakthrough. And I feel like we're all in this space where we're getting challenged. And I really feel like it's like we're going to the next level, but it's really the universe asking you, are you going to repeat the pattern? Are you going to keep that thought? Are you going to stay in that energy of the past version of you? And it's our chance to either say, okay, yeah, I am, or no, F that. I'm going to a different level. I'm stepping into a better version of myself. And actually, one of the phrases that I've been loving right now is I used to actually have the tagline, step into the best version of yourself, but I've just been resonating and vibing with the word favorite. And for me, that just takes all the pressure off, right? Is that we don't have to be the best. We don't have to live up to unrealistic expectations. We don't have to be perfect, but we can be the version of ourselves that we love the most, that makes us feel so juicy, deliciously good inside of ourselves. And yeah, that's where I'm at right now, is I feel like there's just a lot of pressure around, are you going to repeat the past?
Mm-hmm.
And I think everyone's feeling that.
Yes. Yeah, I totally agree. I love that, your favorite version, and we've talked about this is, a lot of what I do is work on embodiment. And it's like, to embody, you have to know what you're embodying, who you're embodying, like what is that version, and there's, I think, this curation that happens of all of these almost like societal things of like, this is what this is supposed to look like, and this is what this is. And I'm like, but who are you? Like, outside of all of that. So I love that, like your favorite version. So I'd love for you to share kind of your process. Like where are you at? What's going on in like business or life? What for you is coming up, and what are you moving towards? Like, what's your target for the end of the year?
Yeah. So my big thing right now is I'm working on live events, and it's so funny. I had a conversation with a friend this morning because I'm super transparent about myself, my work, my doubts, and I will never live as somebody who is an influencer and thought leader in an authentic way. So one of the things that it's an old story, but when I was like, 10 years old, I had this birthday party where nobody showed up. And it started this trend where I just stopped labeling everything as a party, or I just was really cautious around how I framed things because my expectation was that nobody would come. So I'm moving into this phase of live events, and these old stories are popping up of like, well, what if no one shows up? And it's an interesting thing to have these old stories, because I know where they're coming from, and I know that they're not true. And so the process of, what's underneath that, what happens, how am I willing to settle into an uncomfortable emotion and be okay with that? And I think that's the challenge, is that as these stories are coming up for whoever's listening, too, it's being willing to know that disappointment doesn't kill you. It's being willing to know that sometimes the 3 people who show up are better than the 300 because it's intimate and it's more impactful and it's more in alignment. It's reframing and reconnecting with your purpose and the intention of what you're doing and why.
Yeah.
And there has to be a willingness to go through the fear of rejection, or the fear of abandonment, or the fear of being let down or embarrassed, or whatever the bullshit we're afraid of, to be able to get to your next level. And so, like, personally for me, those are stories that I'm like constantly like, nope, we're good. Like, nope, we're still doing this. Nope, we're still showing up on whatever day it is, and showing up in fullness. And I think that's a hard thing to work through, is those old beliefs, because they're there because they felt true at one point in time, or there was an experience or a parent figure or something that impacted you in a genuine way. And so now it's up to you to really sit with that energy and sit with those emotions, and being willing to do it. And like, that's the thing, is like willingness, being willing to experience the fear, being willing to experience the emotions so that you can move through it.
Exactly. I just was at a networking event this last weekend in Salt Lake City, and one of the speakers, his name's William Lamb. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's incredible. His company's called Upgrade, and he talks about how we have the potential to reach the quantum possibilities, right? These like untapped parts of us. And this is, I think the umbrella of what you and I even are working with people, but it's so beautiful to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? And it's like, yeah, you could, call in 3 people, but one of those people could be $1 million client. Like, you have no idea why certain things are happening sometime, until you just allow yourself, I think, to be open to, it's always working out for me, right? Everything's always working out, even if like this isn't what I thought it was going to be. So I'd love to also know, some spaces where you feel like you have really gotten in the uncomfortable, and you just like let yourself be there and play. And William Lamb kind of spoke as like, we have growth, and then we have the panic zone before we reach hyper growth, which is that like quantum space. And the panic zone is normally where people like retract and fall back, and they're like, oh no, that's too much. But you'll never know your potential in hypergrowth if you don't plant your flag in that panic zone. So I'd love to kind of hear and, riff on that for a second around like, where are you currently, or have you been, so the listeners can feel that resonance too, really uncomfortable?
It's funny because I'm a manifester by human design. If I decide something, I'm going for it. However, sometimes I go for it, I get there, and then I'm like, shit, what did I do? And the perfect example is that I had a wellness center in New York, and I had it with my best friend, and it was just an incredible business, but my soul was really calling me to move out of the area. I wanted to be in an area that was thriving and growing and massive. I really thrive off a good city energy. I moved from a very small town in upstate New York to right outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. It's one of the fastest growing cities in the US. And I made the jump in 2.5 months. I sold my house. I let go of my business. I just made this jump because it felt aligned to me. And I'm really good at following things that feel aligned. And that can be really scary for a lot of people to even get to the place where it feels aligned and make that choice. But I'm good at that. The area that I have afterwards is, I moved here and nobody knew me. and no, I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anybody. I didn't have friends. I've had my same group of friends since 3rd grade, or just people I've met along the way. All my friends are like 10+ year type friends. I'm very blessed with great friendships. So I moved here and I was like, I'm invisible. I know nobody. I gave up my business the way it was structured. I'm not seeing
Mhm.
people in person anymore, and that's weird. And so I got into this space of like, what the fuck did I do?
Mhm.
And it was this really interesting time period for me for about 3 months. I mean, I called my friend Christy, who I own the wellness center with, and I'm like, did I did I screw this up? Is this where I messed up? But the reality is I was so comfortable in New York. And I was uncomfortable because my soul needed something else. But on a base level, my business was working really well. It was growing really well. My house was fine. Like everything was like perfectly fine. But there's this space, and I talk about this a lot in the book. There's just like this knock on the door, like your internal door when something needs to change, even when it's perfectly fine. And I think sometimes that change is harder because it doesn't make a logical sense. That change
Exactly.
where I always in the book I describe it as running with your pants on backwards. Like, have you ever put yoga pants on and they like, they look the same front and back, but when they're not on the right way? It's
Yeah.
just that noticing. It's that noticing that something that used to be comfortable is now uncomfortable. And the more you notice it, the more you notice it. And it's really hard to justify change in those scenarios because there's nothing really obviously wrong other than your soul knocking on the door saying something isn't right, or maybe there's more for you. And so there's two choices once you get to that panic zone is you can cave into the panic. You can feed the energy of panic,
Mm.
or you can get curious. What drew me to make this change in the first place? Well, I was curious about what it would be like to live in a bigger city. I was curious about the people I can meet. I was curious about the impact I can make in a new community. I was curious about what that might be like to have access to more shops and restaurants and nightlife and whatever else. And so there's two energies to be fed at all times. There's the energy of what you don't want and the energy of what you do want. I went on a hike in Zion National Park a couple years ago. Very dangerous hike, Angel's Landing. It's steep drop off on both sides. And I'm like carefully going up this mountain, and this man is literally just kind of jogging by me. I mean, literally, if you make one wrong step, you're plummeting. And I stop him. I'm like, sir, you are Speedy Gonzalez on this. And he was like, just look where you want to go, not where you don't want to go. And I hold that to
Mm.
this day of anytime you're in a scenario where you're in the panic zone, you have two choices of the energy you're feeding. You can look at what you don't want, and you can look at where you don't want to go, or you can look at where you do. And it matters what energy you're feeding, and it matters what stories you're feeding. And if you can feed the curiosity more than you can feed the fear and discomfort, it will make the day-to-day manageable, because that's where the change happens anyway. We can look at, oh, here's where I want to be. And in manifestation, we do that a lot of quantum jumping, and here's where I'd like to be. But the reality is it's the moment you can bring yourself into the present and look at, oh, okay, so I'm a little uncomfortable right now, but what made me want to make this change in the first place? What things can I get excited about? And when we start to feed that energy, we create unparalleled momentum for ourselves.
Mm. So good. I love so many things you just said. And one of the pieces that I was actually talking to a friend of mine about as well earlier today was, I think in the world right now, we have so much more consciousness, right? Which I love. People are getting into manifesting, they're getting into ritual, they're praying more, they have altars, they're, getting in sisterhood circles or, tribes where they're supported. And all of this is beautiful. And I think that the shiny object of quote manifestation, right, is like, this is the way you do it, right? You got to feel it, you got to visualize it, you got to write it, you got to do all these. And one of the blocks that was interesting that has come up that I'm personally really dissecting in my own space in the quantum leap I'm in right now is, what am I expecting? Right. And so it's like the other little side layer of my mind is like, yeah, I can tell myself and write it down and, get into the visualization. But like on the daily, what is my mind doing? Like, what am I actually expecting to happen? Like, I want to be a millionaire. Cool. Okay. But are you expecting it? Or are you just like, yeah, I'm writing it down, I'm doing my ritual, I'm feeling what it would feel like to have it. And then it's like, when you get out of that little bubble, the work still has to be there. Like, you still have to keep your eye on the prize, eye on the target. And it's like, if you're doing all this manifestation to be a millionaire, and then in the next beat, you're like, how am I going to make rent this month? Like, I just can't do this. And I don't have that. You're like canceling out everything that just happened. And I think it's so important to drive home for people this work to quantum leap, to change your life, to do all of that. Like, you can run and move cities, you can do all of that, and you will get somewhere else. But then exactly what you said is like, but then I'm there. And then it's like all of the daily mindset is where the work drops in. So speaking to that, what is your kind of practice or ritual with like daily mindset, and especially like in growth? Because I think a lot of people collectively are doing some big moves right now. So thank you for sharing your literal big move. So people are like, I'm not crazy.
I actually love that you said that, because I think that's important. When I first learned about manifestation, I was like, reading about visualizing. I am not a visual person. It is so hard for me. Even when I read intuitively, I'll say I see this. I'm not seeing it. I just know.
Mm.
My knowing is my power. And I remember sitting with somebody who first taught me manifestation. His name's Jaron Kenyon. One of my favorite humans on the face of this planet, just made such a massive impact in my life. But he said, real manifestation comes when it becomes a knowing, not a belief. And he said, and he held up a cup and he said, do you know this is a cup? And I was like, well, yeah. And he's like, well, how do you know it? I'm like, well, it's just because it's a cup. He's like, well,
Yeah.
when you know that you're going to be a millionaire, when you know that you're going to be confident, or when you know that that manifestation gets to come, then that's yours. And so learning manifestation is an intuitive process, because you have to dissect what feels most aligned for you. So for a lot of people, vision boards and visualizing and sitting in that visual energy is amazing. For me, I'm a writer. I write books, I write blogs, I write. So my process is manifestation writing. And I detail this so much in Rock Your Comeback, and I give you examples, but there's 3 really strong things that manifestation writing every morning does for me. And I do it every morning still. This is like a practice that has personally changed my life. And to this day, from the last decade, taken my life in a wildly different direction, but I still do it every single morning. And how I set this up is I write a letter to the universe, God, my higher self, whatever you connect with and believe in. And I write a thank you note as though the things that I desire have already occurred. And I'm just saying thank you. So this is doing a couple things for me. I'm reminding myself that I'm not alone throughout my day. So I'm plugging into the universe. I'm ready and willing to be guided. I'm opening up that energy flow to connect to my higher self, to the energy that creates worlds. I'm writing for what I know that's going to happen for me. I'm writing that out. I'm planning for it. I'm knowing it because I'm deciding. I'm already saying thank you because it already exists. So I'm telling my brain, and I'm really doing a lot of neurological rewiring. So one of my favorite things to write for is honestly not money. It's not, I mean, I do sometimes, but the reality for me is that if I'm in a good space, good shit just happens. That's a knowing. So I write for how I feel. I write for how I feel about myself. I write for my mood. I write for my energy with my kids. I write for who I am in the world and how I want that energy to come out. And that's my money. That's my gold. That's where all these opportunities and doors open and curiosities come through and connections are made for me. So I'm putting myself connected to the universe. I am writing daily to rewire my neurology, really. And then I'm also speaking in a way of gratitude, which is a really high vibration. So just those 3 things alone set me up for the best day ever. And again, for people who are more visual, it might look different, but for anybody who is more in that knowing space or that feeling space or that writing space, that might be a great practice for you to try as well.
I love that. I don't see, now I'm the visual person, so I'm on the other side. I'm not as much. I do write things. But writing is like I have to push myself to do it instead of like visually sitting and like doing like mantras or whatever. But I do a lot of that, similar in the morning before I even get out of bed. I do like my top 3 like gratitudes. And a lot of times it'll be, 3 that I'm really grateful are already here. And then I'll drop in 3 of like what I'm working towards, like, thank you for bringing that to me. And, the other thing I would say is for anybody listening, and if these are new to you, if these are things like if you're sitting in the space saying, I want to change, I want to create something different, is it writing for you? Is it sitting in visualization? Maybe it's both. But one of the other pieces I think is what's authentic for you. And I think that in itself can be such a journey, right? Because I think a lot of times there's a lot of people that create their manifestations based around what they believe they are supposed to have, right? Like I'm supposed to have X amount, or I'm supposed to have, this relationship, or this is supposed to be happening in my life. And, I think we're coming into an era, thankfully, and I think that we are creating an era where people can just be authentic. Like maybe you don't want kids. Maybe, you're 30 something and you're like, the reality for me and my authenticity is I don't want to be, a mom or a dad. Like I'm here to do something different. And that's totally okay. Maybe you in reality really do want a lot of money because you want to be able to serve in a way that's bigger and more expansive. So then it's what leads you to that, right? It's always finding these roots. But I'd love to kind of shift gears into like embodiment and authenticity and what that really means to you, because these are, words that I think are getting brought into a lot of places right now, but I don't know that people are really grasping what they mean.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I wrote an entire chapter in Rock Your Comeback on truth. And when I think of authenticity, I think of truth. I think of being willing to tell the truth. And there's so much pressure from society, from parents, from culture to be, act, do certain things with yourself, with your person, with your life, and having and creating moments to come back within and just tuning back in. And I really feel like depression and anxiety are our soul's check engine lights. So I know a lot of people are like running to pills when they're starting to feel that way, but I think that truth telling is a really massive part of releasing some of the symptoms from that. Like if I wrote in my book, depression is suppression. When we're not telling ourselves the truth, when we're not willing to say, this is how I really feel about this job. This is how I really feel about this relationship. And I even think this is true in mom culture, is this is how I really feel about being a mom sometimes. There's all this pressure to be perfectionistic. So when it comes to authenticity, it's really about being willing to tell yourself the truth. And even if you don't tell it to anybody else, if you're willing to admit it to yourself, that's such a beautiful first start. Because what happens when we're not telling the truth and we're internally feeling this way and externally acting this way, it will create cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is like a violent argument in our brain, and that will always produce anxiety. It will always produce guilt. It will always produce shame. It will always produce these negative, low vibrational feelings that aren't going to help you. If we're talking embodiment to me is about the energy that fills your person. So if we're constantly feeling one way and acting another, it is creating so much unnecessary anxiety. So to cure that, and the cure is kind of simple, right? Is that we can look in the mirror and just, the truth is, and just whatever comes out. And the cool thing is that we can do this in a process where we don't have to judge ourselves. We don't have to judge it. We don't have to decide what it says or means about us. Sometimes even before I manifest, I'll just sit with like an open Word document and just whatever comes to mind for 5 to 10 minutes, just sit. The truth is, where am I really at today? Not who do I need to pretend to be in the world? Not who do I need to show up as? Like, who am I in this moment? What exact emotions am I feeling? Because I have one or two options when I'm feeling the discomfort that we talked about earlier, is I can tell the truth about it, like we did earlier. I can tell you, man, having a real jacked up day today. Here's what I did to take care of myself, because I do know how to take care of it. But I'm human in a human experience and world that can be challenging and throw this, experiences at my feet that I have to decide what to do with. So it's really up to you to begin to tell yourself the truth. And the cool thing is, when you start to tell yourself the truth, even if you don't tell other people, like, let's say we don't have to, tell your boss you hate this job and you want out, right? Even if we just admit it to yourself, you put yourself in a better position to manifest the things that are in better alignment with you, because truth is alignment and alignment is authenticity. And alignment is also, for me, embodiment. So if we think of all of this leading back to this one simple activity that you can do any day of the week, any time of the day, that if we just start to tell the truth, we start to get access to real thoughts, real feelings. And we also can start to hold compassion for ourselves, because some things that we've been through are hard. Some jobs we're into, we were into is because we had to, and maybe they were great for what we needed it for at the time. And maybe it's time to move on. But this helps so much when it comes to authenticity. It's just being willing to tell your truth, because you're not battling yourself. Anytime you're not battling yourself and you're just giving yourself permission to have a shitty day, or you're just giving yourself permission to not like your job, or just giving yourself permission to admit that parenting is real hard, like whatever that is, it opens up your energy and it gives you freedom to create. And I think that's where we get a real serious power back, is when we open up enough to say, okay, this is the truth. Am I ready to do something about it? Okay, maybe I am and maybe I'm not, but at least if I'm not, that's okay too. And we can find some solace and some calm in that.
Yes. And something that just is kind of popping through as you're speaking is, I think society, and even in, this consciousness era, there's a lot around, shadow and darkness, and like certain things are labeled. Like if you say like, oh, my kids are horrible today or whatever, right? As a mom, it's like, well, I can't say that because then I'm going to look like a bad mom. And then I'm going to, it's all of this spiral downwards, right? When you don't have the tools to know, like, in this moment, this is my truth, and it's okay that that's my truth. So I'd love to kind of hear your perspective on, we can live in the highlight manifestation, right? We can be in that space, but without spiritually bypassing. Like there are parts of us that I think a lot of us have been taught, and whether it's generationally or programming or society, are shadowy or dark or bad, or if you say or do this way, it's wrong, right? And so I think a lot of times the truth meter just gets like almost dulled down or shut down in some spaces for people, because as soon as their mind even goes to a certain space, it's like they're already labeling it. We're already like putting the label maker out. We're like, nope, dark, bad, shadow, can't do that. It's not light. It's not whatever. So I'd love to kind of hear your perspective, on that, because I think personally, we just talked about this in the last podcast episode too, what is labeled dark or shadowy, in my opinion, I'm like, to be fully embodied, you've got to sit with all of these pieces that you label and you say are X, Y, or Z. And even if they are maybe a denser piece or part of you, you still have to witness it and just be real about it. And then you can choose to walk in that, lighter side. But I love to kind of hear your perspective on this piece.
Just because you shove it down doesn't make it go away.
Yes.
That's, if you think about that, and like even let's say you have this glass of water and you put a black drop of food coloring in it. That's the energy, right? If we think about our energy in that way, we have a black drop of food coloring in it. I don't believe in sitting in the shadow. So I don't think we need to sit in our trauma and sit in the heaviness. I don't believe that, but we can't ignore it. And so maybe that looks like finding that radical acceptance that even though I'm feeling this way, I'm still worthy of love and belonging. I think that's Brené Brown, right? Even though I'm feeling this way, even though this thing happened to me, even though I'm struggling with being a mom right now, or I'm struggling with my boss right now, or even though these things are happening, I'm still worthy of love and belonging. We can acknowledge them. I write about it sometimes. So I'll just sit there with that energy and emotion. What does this emotion need to tell me right now? I make space for my manifestation, because we have to clear that darkness out to let new stuff in. Just because we're ignoring it, it just doesn't go away. It will sit in your energy field, and you will perpetually attract that energy to you if you don't address it. But I'm a licensed mental health counselor at the education level of things. I'm a licensed mental health counselor. And so the problem that I have and why I've switched courses is that I also don't think sitting in your past for 3, 4, 5 weeks at a time is beneficial either. I think we have to find a medium where we honor and have radical compassion for our emotions and have truth without judgment. And if you can find that of, I'm just going to give myself permission today, just for today, to hold space for the hard shit that has happened to me. I'm going to give myself permission for today to write it out, to talk it out, to get it physically, energetically out of my body. And then I'm going to neutralize this energy tonight by reminding myself that it's okay, by reminding myself that I'm still worthy of love and belonging, by reminding myself that I'm still really powerful in my ability to create a better version of me. And the minute, the whole second we remember that we are a powerful creator, that we get to decide something new for our life, that we get to choose what we're going to do with that story, that we get to dissect the story that we're telling ourselves about what happened and what it means about your life now. Those are the moments where we make massive radical changes in our life. And it's not that that might not come up again, but give it time, give it energy, and then decide what the fuck you're going to do with it. Decide what it gets to turn into. We get to alchemize the heavy shit that's happened to us and create something beautiful. I would not be in this position if I didn't go through the darkest depression of my life after having my daughter at the age of 20. And while I was still in college, super broke college student, like I wouldn't be who I am without the darkness, but I had to alchemize it. And for a while, I just sat in it. So we always have a choice, and it's always remembering your power to come back to that choice of what energy, I mean, full circle moment from the beginning of the conversation, what energy am I going to feed? But we have to find that permission to sit with that knowing that does not matter what has happened, does not matter what we've done, doesn't matter what the story's been up until now. We get to rewrite it. We get to create something new, and we get to neutralize it. And if I can't neutralize it that day, what I'm going to focus on is just taking really, really good care of myself that day. That's it. I don't have to do anything magical. I might just make sure I get a really good night's sleep. I might just make sure I drink a little more water. I might just make sure I get a little sunlight on my skin. We can get back to the basics. And I talk a lot about this in Rock Your Comeback of that neutralization doesn't have to happen overnight. It doesn't have to happen by feeding into the energy. Sometimes it can just happen in this moment. And I think that's where embodiment happens too, right? Is it happens in this moment of who am I going to be? How am I going to project myself into the world? And sometimes, some days for me, I'm PMSing. Some days for me, I'm whatever, some days are just not that day. I'm not that powerful that day. I'm not feeling that. I'm not embodying that, but I know how to set myself up by getting back to my basics for tomorrow. And I think that's what matters when it comes to doing the shadow work. I think people get lost in the shadow work and become their shadow. If I'm being really honest, I think there's value in that, but I think don't stay there. Don't live there. Visit.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. And I think this is also just such a reason to have tools, because I think when we have the tools to be able to know this is my baseline, this is my foundation, when I'm struggling, this is what I need. It's like we all were human, right? We have days that it's just harder than others, or, traumas may trigger from certain things, and you don't have to sit in it. And my favorite saying is like, whatever we resist will persist, and I think earlier you were talking about compression, and one of the other spaces is I'm constantly asking myself, am I compressing or am I expressing? Because it's one or the other. And where am I at in this space? So I love that perspective. And I think that it's really important to know that all of you is accepted, and all of you is worthy, and all of you is, so worth the life that you want, the love that you want, all of the pieces. And it doesn't have to be an ongoing healing process of a 3-month like shadow journey. And I think that, the way you said too, sometimes people become their shadow. I think that it's really easy to feel like I've really got this under control. Like I know who I am. I know my trauma. I know whatever, and I can talk about it and I won't cry. And like there's almost like the power in the pain instead of turning the pain into the purpose, And so I think that's a good little check mark. That's a good, okay, cool. You've been doing shadow work. You've been doing all of this now. That's beautiful. But we're also here to be in a human experience of expansion and abundance and alignment and happiness and joy and experiencing like all of the things that are here. And this earth is a little crazy, but I mean, like we have some really cool experiences, coming
There's
in here.
there's so much magic to be found. And I think, when you're in the darkness, that's a lot harder to see. So, for anybody's listening, if you need that 3 months of shadow stuff, go for it. If that feels aligned and true, but there will be a moment where you say, okay, now what? Now, what am I going to do with my existence? Now, what am I going to do with my energy? And then the magic really gets to kick into place when you realize that the things that you're experiencing and going through, you're not doing alone. You have help, you have support, you have assistance, which is so funny for me to hear myself say sometimes because I didn't grow up with any kind of base religion, spirituality, anything. There was nothing that was part of my childhood, part of my life. And when I always say, like, God, I didn't find God, God found me. Like the universe found me. Like I wasn't out there looking for a damn thing. And it's just been an unmistakable experience that I know, see, experience, love, and trust the universe to support me. And when you find that space, wherever that space looks like for you, and some people are going to find that in books, some people are going to find that in nature, some people are going to find that in a church. I don't give a shit where you find it, as long as you open yourself up to say, I'm wondering how I can be supported today. I'm ready and willing to be guided today. I'm open to seeing what happens if I just play with this idea that maybe I am supported. It's such a different feeling to not have to entirely rely on you and only your experiences and only the darkness in your life, but to open it up to light and to watch. I mean, I know my life has changed dramatically for the better since I've opened up to the idea that I'm powerful, my thoughts are powerful, the universe is powerful, I'm connecting to the universe. All of these ideas have led me to the life I lead now, which is a complete 180 from 10 years ago when I was a highly depressed, brand new, broke college student mom. Like it's just been an entirely wild ride that nobody could have ever predicted based on where I started.
Yes, I love that. Exactly. I mean, and this is something that, today I was talking about with my membership group was you literally can have like whatever experiences in life that you want, and it doesn't matter where you are right now. Like that has no bearing on where you can go, where you can be, what you can attain. So I love that so much. I can't believe we've already like flown through almost this whole hour. We just like
I
get on
know.
so many conversations. I definitely would love to have you back on here because I know we could talk about all kinds of things. But I'd love to give you a beat to, pitch anything, how people work with you, what that looks like, talk about your books, any of that. So I want to just offer you the space to share with our listeners more.
Yeah, if this is speaking to anybody's soul, obviously I would love, I love DMs. Like I'm somebody who answers all my DMs. So please find me on Instagram at NicholeEaton.xo and DM me. But I would love if you would grab my book if this resonates. I go into really serious detail in my book, and it's full of activities to help you walk through. My editor really wanted me to make a separate workbook. And I said, I would never touch that workbook if this was me, right? I would need the activity as I'm reading it, or I would never come back to it. So it's full of information for every single part of your comeback. If you're in the dark, if you're in what I call a black hole, it's got something for you. If you're working on your thoughts, it's got something for you. If you're working on your intuition, it's got something for you. If you're working on your manifestations, it's got something for you. So if you use the code comeback on NicholeEaton.com for that book, it will get you $5 off. My other book is on there as well, Rock Your Soul. And because I was once a very broke, poor college student who new mom, it's like on my heart to have accessible experiences to work with me. My private sessions are a little bit higher price. So I created something called the Comeback Club. So that's my online membership. It has every single training I have ever created that I've sold previously for like hundreds and thousands of dollars. And I do a new masterclass once a month. I do a live Q&A, so you can ask me your questions once a month. I stop in every Friday and I also do some journal prompts every Monday. So there's a lot there, and it's $22 a month. So I would love if you guys want to come play in that space. It's a lot of fun. It's good vibes, but yeah, I love to hear from you guys. I put out loads and loads and loads of free content on my podcast, Rock Your Comeback, and on my Instagram and TikToks, which is NicholeEaton.xo. So connect with me. I love meeting new people, and I'm sure anybody that is in this space with you, hopefully will be, you know, a great fit, because I just love talking to you and we have so much in alignment and it's been amazing. So I'm really grateful for you holding space for me today.
Oh, thank you for sharing space with us and your magic and beauty and codes. And for those of you who are just listening and you aren't on YouTube to see how beautiful Nichole is, she is just stunning inside and out. And thank you so much for sharing just everything, sharing your heart and your soul with us today. And yes, please go follow her on all of the socials, all of the things. Grab her book. You said it's Comeback is the code, right, for them?
Yep, comeback is the code, all capitals. And if you are somebody who is like an Amazon Prime girly, it is on Amazon Prime, it's on barnesandnobles.com, Target, Walmart, like you can find it everywhere. So, but if you do buy it from my website, I write little personalized messages and notes to everybody. So it makes me happy to share that too.
Love that. I love that so much. And again, you guys, in the description, I'm going to link all of these things. I'll make sure to make a little note down there so you guys, when you're going to purchase, can see that. Nichole, thank you so much. I can't wait to have you back on here. I'm super excited. Also, Nichole did share a little bit that she's going to be have some live events coming up. I know we've kind of been talking because that's also my goal this year. So who knows, we may have both of us in the same room that you guys can come enjoy the magic together in 2024. I love you guys all so much. Thank you for being here, Nichole. And if you guys have any questions, again, drop them down. We'll definitely keep eyes on them and try to answer anything. And then you'll have all of the ways to connect with her, and we will talk soon. Thank you guys so much for being here with us on the Brittany Renee Experience. We'll see you next week. Bye.